about 50% of all people will get diagnosed with cancer, but only 25% of people die to cancer. So it's important to say here that not all people who get diagnosed with cancer are at risk of dying. At the same time, some people might have cancer and it is not even a problem at all, right? For example, with prostate cancer, especially in the beginning stages, you're completely fine if you have prostate cancer sometimes, right? But what is cancer? Well, cancer is a collection of disorders with uncontrolled cell growth. And so the number of cells in a tissue is determined by two things: cell division and cell death. Suppose you have a tissue where you do not have cell division and you do have cell death. Well, probably you don't have cancer. But suppose in another tissue you have a lot of uncontrollable cell division and you do not see apoptosis, so programmed cell death. Well, this probably indicates that you do have cancer, because cancer cells divide uncontrollably. And second of all, cancer cells disable apoptosis. They disable programmed cell death. Because if cells are abnormal or damaged, we need programmed cell death. We need apoptosis. But cancer cells disable this mechanism. And so this can lead to the formation of abnormal growth called tumors, right? The fact that it can disable apoptosis and also divide uncontrollably. This can formate an abnormal growth called tumors. And we have two types of tumors. We have benign tumors and malignant tumors. So benign tumors are slow-growing tumors. They are constrained by surrounding tissue. They do not spread to other organs. And the cells in these tumors are not cancerous and wouldn't spread. So typically speaking, you're fine if you have this type of tumor. Only in rare occasions they can be harmful. For example, they can press on optic nerves and cause loss of vision, or they can push on tissue in the brain, then it could even kill you. But typically speaking, you're fine if you have this. Malignant tumor is a completely different story. Here cells are cancerous and can spread to other tissues and organs. So these can spread beyond the limit of the organ it comes from, so spreading from organ to organ. We also say they metastasize, they spread to more distant tissues. So we want to avoid this at all costs, right? And in fact, we can avoid it, right? We can avoid it because cancer is due to two things. It's due to genetics, it's also due to environment. Mutations. So cancer cells start from damage in the DNA of a cell. So the DNA damage is what we call mutation. And these mutations happen when the cell duplicates its DNA prior to cell division and makes mistakes. And so these damages are typically and usually repaired, but sometimes if they go unignored and go into the daughter cell, well, this can cause problems, okay? But we have two types of mutation. We have driver mutations and passenger mutations. So driver mutations drive to proliferate and allow cancer to grow, and these are a target of potential treatment. So these mutations are directly responsible for promoting cancer development, and these occur in genes involved in regulating cell growth, cell division, and DNA repair. And so when these genes mutate, they can lead to uncontrolled cell growth and tumor formation. On the other hand, passenger mutations do not drive cancer. Okay, so passenger mutations are not that dangerous. So the process where normal cells transform into cancer cells is called carcinogenesis. And carcinogenesis, going from normal cells to cancer cells, does not happen just in a split second. It happens in multiple stages, and is an interaction of genes and environment. And just to drive this point home here, we see this, with some studies, right? For example, cigarettes, they can induce lung cancer. But I also want to give you guys a little study here, which I think is very important. And the study saw that colon cancer is 0.5% in Japan and 5% in the US. So they said, well, this must be due to the fact of the genetics. But then, second generation Japanese people who lived in the US, their colon cancer rose to 5%, just like in the US. So they overestimated the role of genetics, okay? But regardless of this, a person's overall cancer risk depends on a combination of inherited factors and environmental components. And cancer in germline cells give cancer families, right? This is a very, very, very rare phenomenon. But this can happen with, for example, retinoblastoma. So this is childhood cancer of the eye. Retinoblastoma, remember this one. You can see it in the MRI here, you can see it in this child. Retinoblastoma is an example of cancer families. This is a very rare disease. However, this can also be a sporadic retinoblastoma, right? So you have sporadic cancer and you have hereditary cancer, right? Hereditary cancer meaning you have a genetic predisposition for cancer. This is typically seen with retinoblastoma. But sporadic cancer, you can also have it with retinoblastoma. So this is where the cancer arises without a clear hereditary or family predisposition. In fact, sporadic cancer is the most common type of cancer and is a combination of environmental factors and genetic mutations that accumulate over time. But retinoblastoma, just to talk about this typically happens before the age of 5, and this is a genetic mutation in the cells of the retina. And if it happens as an inherited cancer, right, hereditary cancer, well, it is bilateral then. It will affect both eyes, okay? But if it's sporadic retinoblastoma, it only involves one single tumor in one eye, so unilateral. And so familial retinoblastoma would thus be caused by the inheritance of one of the genetic hits as a constitutional mutation, meaning mutation present in all cells in the body, right? And a guy in 1971, I think, called Alfred Knudsen, he was able to find, that retinoblastoma could, the people who had the inherited version of retinoblastoma would have two tumors in both eyes. And so he developed a theory called the two-hit hypothesis, which completely revolutionized our understanding of cancer genetics. And here he proposed that cancer often requires two genetic hits or mutations to develop. So let's just take lung cancer as an example here. So if you have the wild type at birth, right, so it refers to the normal non-mutated version of the gene, which is commonly found in the population and is typically associated with typical healthy function, there is no mutation. But then suddenly, if he smokes, he can get a mutation, and then he can have the malignant phenotype. But here, he has it already at birth, and then he would get the malignant phenotype much earlier. So this is very dangerous.